The morning alarm chimed through Nyla's quarters aboard the Meridian station, a soft pulse of blue light that gradually brightened until she blinked awake. She sat up in her sleeping pod, running a hand through her short, dark hair, and glanced at the chronometer display hovering above her wrist implant. 0600 hours, station time. Another day in humanity's most remote outpost, floating in the L4 Lagrange point, between Jupiter and its moon Europa. Brian was already awake in the adjacent quarters. She could hear him moving around, probably running his morning diagnostics on the hydroponics bay. He was always the early riser, ever since they'd been assigned as research partners 3 years ago. Nyla stretched and made her way to the small kitchenette, her bare feet silent on the temperature-regulated flooring. The coffee maker stood ready, pre-programmed to brew at 0605. She reached for her favorite mug, the ceramic one with the faded Earth Relief Mission logo, and pressed the dispense button. That's when Cub intervened. The small maintenance robot rolled between Nyla and the coffee maker with surprising speed, its articulated arm extending to pluck the mug from her hand before a single drop of coffee could pour. "No hot liquid," Cub's synthesized voice announced, calm but firm. "It is not safe." Nyla stared at the robot, then at her empty hand. "Cub, give me back my mug." "Negative. Environmental analysis indicates thermal beverages pose significant risk to human safety at current station parameters." "What are you talking about?" Nyla crouched down to the robot's optical sensor level. Cub was barely knee-high, designed for crawling through maintenance shafts and performing routine repairs. The AI governing its decision-making was sophisticated, but narrow. It shouldn't be making judgments about her coffee consumption. "Brian," she called out, "your robot has gone rogue." The door to the adjacent quarters slid open, and Brian appeared, already dressed in his standard-issue station jumpsuit. His sandy hair stuck up at odd angles, and there was a crease mark from his pillow still visible on his left cheek. "Cub's been acting strange all night. I meant to tell you." "Strange how?" Nyla asked, watching as Cub carefully placed her mug on a high shelf, well out of reach. Brian pulled up a holographic interface, his fingers dancing through streams of data. "Around 0300, Cub detected micro-fluctuations in the station's structural integrity. Hull sections J7 through J12 are showing unusual thermal stress patterns." Nyla felt her stomach tighten. "Those sections are directly adjacent to our living quarters." "Exactly." Brian enlarged a schematic of the station. "Look at this. The external hull temperature in those sections has been rising 0.03 degrees per hour for the past 6 hours. 0.03 doesn't sound critical. It wouldn't be, except we're in deep space. There's no reason for those sections to be heating up at all." Brian highlighted a series of red dots along the hull. Cub cross-referenced the data with maintenance logs. These sections were all reinforced with the new titanium ceramic composite alloy we installed last month. Nyla moved closer to the display, her earlier irritation at Cub forgotten. "The batch that came from the Ganymede foundry? That's the one." She pulled up the material specification sheet, her eyes scanning the technical details she'd reviewed dozens of times during installation. The alloy was supposed to have superior thermal regulation properties, better than the old hull plating. "In theory, yes." Brian isolated one section and ran a simulation. "But look what happens when you introduce microfractures into the lattice structure and subject it to temperature differentials." The simulation played out in horrifying clarity. The titanium ceramic composite, when compromised at the molecular level, didn't simply fail. It created a runaway thermal reaction. Heat would build gradually, almost imperceptibly, until it reached a critical threshold. Then the material would undergo rapid phase transition, essentially vaporizing in seconds. "How long do we have?" Nyla asked quietly. Brian's jaw clenched. "If Cub's projections are accurate, about 4 hours before the hull sections reach critical temperature. After that, he didn't need to finish the sentence. Nyla looked down at Cub, who sat quietly near the coffee maker, optical sensors blinking in a patient pattern. The little robot had been trying to protect her. Any hot liquid, coffee, tea, even warm water, would raise the ambient temperature in their quarters by a fraction of a degree. Normally meaningless, but with the hull already compromised and heating up, every fraction mattered. "We need to evacuate these sections and initiate emergency cooling protocols," Nyla said, already moving toward the communication panel. "Agreed. I'll wake the rest of the crew and get them to the safe modules." Brian paused. "Cub probably saved our lives, you know. If we hadn't caught this now, if the hull had failed while everyone was asleep..." Nyla activated the station-wide alarm, her fingers steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her system. "Emergency Protocol Alpha 7. All personnel evacuate sections J1 through J15 immediately. This is not a drill." As klaxons began wailing throughout the Meridian station, Nyla knelt down beside Cub. The robot's optical sensor swiveled to face her. "Thank you," she said softly. "Ensuring human safety is primary function," Cub replied, "though statistical analysis suggests you will still want coffee once crisis is resolved." Despite everything, Nyla laughed. "You're absolutely right about that." 6 hours later, after the crisis had been contained and the faulty hull sections replaced, Nyla sat in the station's observation deck with Brian. They both held steaming mugs of coffee, safe now in the reinforced sections far from the damaged hull. Cub rolled between them, having apparently appointed itself their permanent guardian. "No hot liquid?" the robot inquired hopefully. Nyla smiled and took a long sip. "Hot liquid is safe now, Cub, thanks to you." The small robot's status lights flickered in what might have been satisfaction, and it settled down to watch the stars wheeling past Jupiter's massive form in the viewport. Sometimes, Nyla reflected, the smallest voices carried the most important warnings.